The cab drops me a half block from the Whitmore house because I want the element of surprise the way a good coach steps onto the mat without telegraphing a move. Snow lifts off the street in thin, glittering sheets, and the air is a knife that cuts straight through my coat. It's Christmas Eve in Fort Collins, Colorado, the kind that makes your breath crystallize and the sky ring like glass. From the sidewalk, I can already see the bay window glowing warm as a hearth in a storybook. Inside, a fire flares orange. A long table shimmers under gold chargers and polished crystal. A turkey lacquered and proud, stemware raised, laughter that swells and then breaks into smaller, satisfied sounds. The Whitmores look like a portrait of American cheer. I follow the flagstone path, boots sinking with a rubbery squeak, a habit forming in the snow behind me. Jingle Bells slips out through the window panes as if the whole house hums it. My heart beats faster. Lily will squeal, I tell myself. She'll throw a dish towel over her shoulder and rush the door. We'll cry the kind of tears that thaw cold months. That's the story I've rehearsed the entire drive up I-25. When I reach the porch, the Ring camera blinks a mean blue. I knock once, playful, twice louder. The deadbolt stares back at me, horizontal locked. I'm reaching for the bell when something small and human shifts to my left. Lily. I don't even recognize my voice. She is curled in the shadow beside a planter crusted with ice, wearing a thin, wrinkled blouse and slippers darkened by snowmelt. Her hair clings to her forehead. Her lips are the color of old porcelain. Her arms are wrapped around herself the way children hug stuffed animals when they're sick. She doesn't lift her head, only flinches like sound hurts. I'm beside her in a step, my taekwondo coach's jacket off my shoulders, in a clean practice sweep. Heat dumps into the night with it. I wrap her, tucking the collar under her chin. Her skin is so cold my hands feel like they're on metal. Hey, baby. Hey, I whisper a coach's cadence, steady and rhythmic like counting someone through a hard round. Her lashes flutter. Mom. The word shivers out in a ghost of breath, and then she folds into me all beak-light bones and the kind of shaking that comes from the inside. I push my shoulder against the door. The deadbolt refuses me. It's been thrown from the inside. A detail simple as a pencil mark, and it slices everything I thought I knew neatly in half. Through the glass, I catch the Whitmores at mid-toast. Chase, my son-in-law, lifts a bottle with the careful swagger of a man who believes the room belongs to him. Judge Gerald Whitmore, retired, esteemed, and well aware of it, tips his head with satisfied gravity. Evelyn smiles with her lips, not her eyes. Brooke leans in to take a picture, making sure the angle flatters them all. My daughter is on the porch at 32 degrees, and they are posing for posterity. Hold on, I tell Lily and slip a hand under her knees. Her slippers drop off, thudding soft into the drift. She's lighter than she should be. I think of all the miles I've logged for national team camps, the nights I told myself one more meet and I'll be home, and how the bill for that story is now due in full. I set my back to the door and pound with the side of my fist. Once, twice, 3 times until the music inside hiccups and someone mutters. The knob turns. Evelyn opens it 2 inches, red nails bright as berries around the edge. Grace, she says, the syllable stretched like taffy. What a surprise. She aims her body to block the view, but I am already stepping forward, an old reflex press. The line, take the space. The deadbolt was thrown, I say. Evelyn smiles again, political precise. Lily needed air. She's hypothermic, I answer, each word flat as a palm strike. Behind Evelyn's shoulder, the room swivels toward us. Brooke's grin curdles. Chase squares his jaw. The judge's eyes weigh and sort. The fragrant steam of butter and wine and rosemary slips past Evelyn's shoulder and wraps around the cold on my daughter's skin. It is obscene. Move, I say to Evelyn. Not loud, final. She falters a fraction, and that's all I need. I take the jam with my shoulder and push. The door flies wide, and the warmth of the house rushes at us like a false embrace. Meltwater patters off my hems onto their perfect hardwood as I carry Lily straight into the center of the room, light flaring against the wet sheen on her hair. For a heartbeat, no one speaks. The fire pops. Somewhere a cork sighs. I turn so every Whitmore can see my daughter's trembling mouth, the white edges of her fingernails, the way the jacket swallows her. My voice doesn't have to be loud to reach every corner. It only has to be true. I'm very glad you're here, because witnesses matter, because shame hates an audience, because this is the last time anyone in this house mistakes silence for consent. If this opening hits you, if you've ever chosen warmth over decorum for someone you love, share this chapter or tell me the moment you knew enough was enough. Your voice might be the light someone on a cold porch needs tonight. The door slammed against the wall with a hollow crack, the kind that makes conversation die mid-sentence. A burst of warm, spiced air rushed out roast turkey cinnamon wine, wrapping around me like an insult. I carried Lily across the threshold, her limp body pressed to my chest, the weight of her head against my shoulder, far too light. For a second, the room froze. The Whitmores, all satin and pearls and smug composure, looked at me like I'd dragged a ghost into their holiday photograph. Chase was the first to move. He was standing by the fireplace, glass-in-hand shirt unbuttoned one too many notches. He blinked disbelief, twisting into annoyance. "Grace, what the hell are you doing? What am I doing?" My voice cracked like dry ice. "Your wife was outside Chase, locked out, 32 degrees. His mother, Evelyn, perched near the piano, adjusted her wine glass with a tinkling laugh. "Oh, please." Lily needed a little air. She gets dramatic sometimes. I laid my daughter on the couch closest to the fire. Her skin was pale against the red upholstery, trembling even under my coat. I could see the steam rising from her damp hair. Her slippers, one blue, one pink, lay somewhere in the snow behind me. Evelyn's voice floated again, thick with mock concern. "Grace, dear, you really shouldn't barge in. You're soaking wet." That did it. I stood tall, fists at my sides. She could have frozen to death out there. The patriarch finally stirred. Judge Gerald Whitmore Regal, even in his retirement cardigan, leaned back in his chair with deliberate calm. "Lower your tone, Mrs. Carter," he said, each syllable carved in marble. "You're in my son's house." "Your son's house," I echoed, looking around. The polished mahogany, the garland draped across the mantel, the family portrait above the fireplace, Lily's face small and out of place in the corner. "And my daughter's prison," Brooke Chase's sister snorted. "Prison, please. She's lucky we put up with her moods." She reached for a plate of pie as if the conversation bored her. 4 miscarriages and still acts like she's the only woman who's ever suffered. The words hit harder than the cold outside. I saw Lily flinch, her fingers curling into fists. A sound rose in my throat but came out low, steady. "You will not speak about her like that again." Chase stepped forward, the smell of whiskey sharp on his breath. "You don't get to lecture us, Grace. You're a guest here, barely that. Lily's been unstable for months. We tried to help her. Help I shot back. By locking her out." His jaw tightened. "She said she wanted space. Space doesn't mean the porch in winter." He looked away, suddenly finding the floor fascinating. The judge interjected, his tone booming with practiced authority. "Mrs. Carter, your daughter has brought embarrassment on this family. We've tolerated her behavior out of respect for you." "Respect?" I repeated the word acid on my tongue. "You call this respect?" I gestured toward the couch where Lily lay, trembling, her lips whispering words too faint to catch. "Enough." Evelyn set down her glass with a soft thud. "You're ruining Christmas." "Christmas?" I let out a short, humorless laugh. "You ruined that when you left her outside." The room swayed between silence and tension. The only sound was the fire crackling as if mocking us all. Then Lily's voice broke through, fragile as a paper flame. I tried to come in," she stammered, "but Chase said I was embarrassing him." Her eyes darted toward her husband, wide and pleading. "He said I should wait until I stopped crying. Every muscle in my body coiled. Is that true?" I asked, my tone barely above a whisper. Chase looked at me, then at his father, seeking permission. The judge's expression didn't change, only one slight nod, permission to stay superior. Chase shrugged. She was hysterical. It was a family dinner. She needed to calm down. You mean you needed her to disappear, I said. No one answered. Even Brooke had stopped smirking. The music still played softly in the background. Have yourself a merry little Christmas, like a cruel soundtrack to our unraveling. I knelt beside Lily and took her hands in mine, trying to rub warmth back into them. Her eyes brimmed with tears that didn't fall. Maybe she was too tired to let them. "Mom," she whispered, "can we go home?" The way she said it broke me. Not can we leave, but can we go home? I nodded once. Yes, sweetheart, we're leaving. I lifted her again, my arms trembling from the effort, but not from weakness. From rage, from the weight of years of swallowed pride. I turned toward the door. Evelyn called after me, her tone sharp as cut glass. "You walk out that door, Grace, and don't expect our family's help when she falls apart again." I looked over my shoulder, meeting her eyes. "You've done enough helping." We stepped back into the night. Snow had begun to fall again, quiet and relentless. I pulled the coat tighter around Lily, her head resting against my collarbone. Behind us, laughter cautiously restarted, forced brittle. As the taxi headlights cut through the dark, I looked down at my daughter's face. Her breath came shallow but steady now, a fragile rhythm of life reclaiming itself. And I realized that warmth didn't come from the glow of a perfect house or a roaring fire. It came from the arms that never let you freeze. The cab's heater groaned against the cold, blowing-out air that smelled faintly of rubber and dust. I sat in the back seat, cradling Lily in my lap, her damp hair pressed against my chin. The driver kept glancing at the rearview mirror, but he didn't ask questions. Maybe he saw enough in my face to know this wasn't the kind of night for small talk. Outside, the snow turned into sleet, tapping against the windows in rhythmic despair. Streetlights passed like slow blinks, amber, white, amber, each one a quiet witness to what we were leaving behind. Lily stirred, her voice barely audible. "Did I do something wrong?" The question slid through me like a knife. I tightened my hold around her shoulders. "No, baby, you didn't do a damn thing wrong." "But," Chase said I embarrassed him. "He was wrong," I said, steady but shaking inside. "You hear me?" "He was wrong." Her lips moved soundlessly as if arguing with herself. Then she went quiet again. When the cab stopped in front of my apartment complex, I paid the driver without looking up. The wind bit my face as I carried Lily inside. The hallway smelled of old carpet and radiator heat. Nothing glamorous, but it was safe, and for now that was everything. Inside my unit, I laid her on the small couch beneath the framed photo of the 2016 National Taekwondo team. It was the only thing that ever made the place feel like mine. I switched on the old space heater, found a towel, and knelt beside her. Her fingers were so cold that when I rubbed them, it felt like trying to warm stone. She looked at the photo on the wall and whispered, "You always said pain makes you stronger." I met her gaze. I said that about training, not marriage. Her mouth curved almost a smile, but it didn't last. I went to the kitchen, filled the kettle, and poured her a mug of instant cocoa. It wasn't fancy, but the sweet smell filled the room with something that resembled comfort. I handed it to her carefully, making sure she could grip it. Steam fogged her face as she lifted it to her lips. "Mom," she said after a sip, "they hate me." "They fear you," I corrected softly. "They hate what they can't control." She stared into the mug, watching the cocoa swirl. "I used to think I could fix it. If I cooked better. If I smiled more. If I didn't talk about losing the babies." Her voice broke, and she pressed the back of her hand to her mouth. "I thought maybe if I just tried harder." "Stop." I sat beside her, gripping her shoulders. "You can't fix cruelty, Lily. You can only leave it." Her tears came then, slow, fragile things that ran over her chilled cheeks. I didn't try to stop them. Letting her cry was the first right thing that had happened all night. After a while, she fell asleep, her breathing steady but shallow. I tucked a blanket over her and sat in the armchair across from her, unable to rest. My body was still buzzing, adrenaline and anger tangled together. I looked around my apartment, the modest shelves of trophies, the stack of unpaid bills, the wall calendar still turned to November. Everything looked smaller, dimmer than I remembered. Maybe I'd been living like this too long always, between places, always gone when she needed me most. A sharp knock startled me. I froze. Then another knock, firmer this time. I opened the door to find Officer Jason Vega standing there, snow melting on his uniform. His face was tight with concern. "Coach," he said, his breath clouding in the doorway, "I heard from dispatch you might need assistance." I blinked, surprised. "You were there earlier?" He nodded. "Saw enough to file a report if you want it. I didn't want to intervene without your call." The steadiness in his voice cracked something in me. After all these years, one of my students had grown into the kind of man who didn't turn away. "Come in," I said. He stepped inside, removing his gloves, eyes landing immediately on Lily. "She okay?" "She will be," I answered, "but I need proof, something official. They'll twist it all if we let them." Jason nodded. "I can log it as a welfare check tonight. Start the paper trail." He pulled out his notepad, jotting details. I gave him everything I remembered: time, temperature, who opened the door, what was said. When I finished, the clock on the wall read 1:12 a.m. Jason tore off a page and handed it to me. "Keep this copy. It's just a preliminary note, but it matters." He hesitated at the door before leaving. "Coach," he said quietly, "I know people like them, the kind that hide behind status. Don't let them scare you. They only win when everyone else stays quiet." After he left, the apartment felt different, still small, still cluttered, but no longer helpless. I sat by Lily's side again, brushed a stray strand of hair from her forehead, and whispered, "You're safe now." Her lips moved in her sleep, a faint sound that might have been Mom. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling where shadows from the streetlight flickered. I thought of all the years I'd told my students to fight with balance, never emotion. But this wasn't sport. This was blood and bone and love. For the first time that night, exhaustion hit me like gravity. I turned off the lamp, leaving only the small heater humming in the corner. Outside, the storm had quieted. Inside, my daughter slept alive, fragile but free from that house. And I knew this was only the extraction. The real battle hadn't even begun. Morning came gray and slow, like the sky was afraid to open its eyes. The storm had calmed overnight, but the world outside my window still looked bruised snow pressed heavy against the glass streets, muffled, no footprints yet to disturb the quiet. Lily was asleep on the couch, the blanket pulled up to her chin. The space heater had hummed all night, its red light casting a soft glow across her face. She looked younger in sleep, like the little girl who used to wait by the gym doors while I finished teaching class, sketching tiny drawings of belts and trophies, always patient, always proud. But the woman on my couch now carried a different kind of exhaustion. Her eyes, even in rest, were swollen at the corners. I knew those marks weren't just from cold. They were from words, the kind that leave bruises nobody else can see. I poured coffee strong and black and sat at the small kitchen table trying to decide what to do next. The air smelled of old toast and melting snow. My mind felt split, half mother, half strategist. A soft sound broke my thoughts. "Mom." I turned. Lily was sitting up, holding the blanket around her shoulders. "I didn't mean to fall asleep," she said, her voice hoarse. "That's the first thing you've done right in a long time," I said gently. "You needed it." She smiled weakly, then frowned. "Chase is going to be so mad." I set the mug down hard enough that it clinked. "Let him be." Her eyes filled, but she nodded like she knew arguing wouldn't change my mind. An hour later, we sat in Dr. Helena Brooks's office. Helena had been a friend since our kids were in middle school, a psychologist who didn't waste words or offer pity. Her office smelled faintly of sandalwood, and every surface was calm and clean like her presence. Lily sat curled on the couch, sleeves pulled over her hands, while Helena took notes in looping handwriting. "Tell me what happened," Helena said softly. Lily hesitated. "I don't remember all of it. I was crying after dinner. Brooke made a joke about how the only baby I can keep alive is a sourdough starter." Everyone laughed. Chase said I was ruining the mood, that I should go breathe some air. Helena glanced at me but said nothing. Lily's voice wavered. I went outside to calm down, but when I tried to come back in, the door wouldn't open. I thought maybe I grabbed the wrong handle. Then I realized it was locked. Her face crumpled, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. I knocked, but the music was loud. I texted him. He said, "Stay put until you're calm." She swallowed. I stayed because I didn't know what else to do. The room went still. Even Helena's pen paused. I wanted to reach out to hold her again, but I forced myself to stay quiet. This was her space to say it, to name it. Helena nodded slowly. That's not a misunderstanding, Lily. That's coercive control psychological abuse, and it's dangerous. He used isolation and humiliation to punish you. Lily blinked, confused. But he didn't hit me. Abuse doesn't have to leave bruises, Helena said. It leaves doubt instead. It makes you question your own worth until you forget what normal feels like. Lily looked at her hands, twisting the edge of her sleeve. Then I guess I've been forgetting for a long time. Helena turned to me. Grace, she'll need a full evaluation, emotional trauma, potential hypothermia follow-up. I can coordinate with a trauma physician I trust, and document everything. If this goes legal, the more you have on record, the better. I've already started, I said. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder I'd created at 3 a.m. Photos of Lily's red, raw hands, the bruise on her shoulder where she'd pushed against the door, a screenshot of Chase's texts. Proof, cold and plain. Helena's brow softened. Good. Keep those safe. And Grace, don't let anger drive you right now. She needs calm more than fire. I nodded, though my pulse was still a drumbeat in my ears. After the session, we went to the small clinic across town. The nurse noted Lily's mild frostbite on her fingers, prescribed ointment, and recommended follow-up therapy for stress-induced insomnia. I asked for copies of every document signed, every line twice. Paper meant protection. Back at the apartment, I helped Lily settle into bed. The exhaustion in her face had shifted. It wasn't just fear now. It was realization. Naming what had happened gave it edges, and edges could be fought. While she slept, I opened my laptop and began drafting an email to a lawyer. I didn't know exactly what came next, divorce, restraining order, public backlash, but I knew silence wasn't an option anymore. Before shutting the computer, I looked once more at the photo on my wall, me and my team, in our doughbox fists raised, every face lit with purpose. I used to think strength was measured in medals and endurance drills, but watching my daughter sleep, bandaged fingers curled under her chin, I understood something new. Strength is standing up even when you're shaking, and naming the wound is the first way to stop the bleeding. The snow had melted into dirty slush along the curbs by the time I sat across from attorney Ava Chen. Her office was small, lined with law books and photos of protests, women holding signs, their faces fierce and tired. She wore no jewelry, no perfume, just a black turtleneck, and the kind of stillness that said she'd seen worse and survived it. I read Dr. Brooks's report. She began flipping through the file I'd brought. This isn't just emotional neglect. This is a pattern of coercion and control. You have a case. Lily sat beside me, clutching a paper cup of tea like it might anchor her. She hadn't said much since we arrived. Her hair was clean now, her skin warmer, but her eyes still carried that glassy caution, like one wrong move might shatter her all over again. Ava leaned forward. We'll start with a protection order. Emergency filing, then a civil suit, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and marital asset mismanagement. I exhaled the words, both foreign and familiar. Protection order, suit, strategy. It sounded like something I'd coached athletes to prepare for. Know your opponent, control the tempo, strike where they're weakest. Lily looked up, uncertain. That sounds big. I don't know if I can go through all that. Ava's tone softened, but not her gaze. Lily, the first thing abusers count on is your exhaustion. They want you too tired to fight. That's why we move now while the evidence is fresh. I reached over and touched my daughter's hand. We'll do it together. Ava nodded, turning to her computer. Send me every text, every transfer, every receipt that shows he controlled your finances, the bank accounts in his name, the ones he restricted you from accessing. Anything where your income or support was filtered through him. I have records, I said quietly. Years of wire transfers. I sent Lily money every month, help for groceries, therapy, whatever she needed. Chase always insisted it go through his account for convenience. Ava's fingers paused over the keyboard. You kept copies? Always. She smiled faintly. Good. That's not just generosity. That's evidence. The next few days blurred into paperwork and silence. Lily stayed mostly in the bedroom, the curtains half drawn, her voice small when she did speak. I spent the hours between coaching calls digging through emails, bank statements, screenshots. The more I found, the clearer the pattern became. Chase had been tightening the leash for years. One afternoon, while scanning another stack of papers, I found an envelope slipped under my door. Plain white, no name. Inside was a single typed line, "Back off." I read it twice, then a third time. The words looked cheap, printed on ordinary paper, but they pulsed with something rotten. I took a photo of it, sealed it in a plastic sleeve, and called Ava. She listened, calm as ever. Classic intimidation. Don't engage, just log it. We'll include it in the harassment claim. That night I barely slept. I kept replaying the dinner scene, the door, the porch, the smug faces. Rage had a heartbeat now, steady and disciplined the way it feels right before a fight begins. The next morning, Officer Jason Vega came by to drop off the official incident report. He looked younger than he had at the door that night, maybe because he'd slept since then. I added the letter to your file, he said. We can run prints if it escalates. Do you think it'll stop? I asked. He hesitated. Not yet, but they're rattled. People like that, when they lose control, they panic. Keep your doors locked. When he left, I found Lily sitting at the kitchen table holding a photo from her wedding day. Chase's arm around her waist, his smile camera ready, hers tentative. I used to think he saved me, she whispered. Now I can't figure out how I didn't see it. I sat beside her. Because you wanted to believe in love, not power. She set the photo down face first on the table. Do you think they'll ever admit what they did? No, I said, but they'll have to face it. By the end of the week, Ava filed the paperwork. The protective order hearing was scheduled for Monday. She emailed copies of everything: witness statement, medical reports, text logs, the letter. The subject line read simply, Whitmore v. Carter evidence submission. When I read those words, something in me shifted. This wasn't just about one night anymore. It was about every year Lily had spent apologizing for existing. Every time she'd been told to smile through pain, to be grateful, to keep quiet for the sake of family image. Late that evening, I walked outside for air. The snow had hardened into icy patches that crunched beneath my boots. Across the street, a neighbor's porch light flickered. For a moment, I imagined the Whitmore house, the perfect Christmas still life, and felt nothing but distance. Inside, Lily was asleep again, her breathing soft and even. On the counter, the file from Ava's office sat thick and organized, a monument of quiet defiance. I poured myself a cup of cold coffee, sat down beside it, and thought, they started this fight, but I know how to finish it. For the first time since that night, I allowed myself to breathe, not the shallow, watchful kind, but a full inhale that reached somewhere deep. It wasn't peace, not yet. It was the beginning of power. The courthouse smelled faintly of dust and lemon polish, that sterile mix of bureaucracy and cold nerves. Lily stood beside me, her hands clasped tightly together. She wore a simple gray dress, the kind that didn't invite attention but also didn't apologize for itself. Her hair was pinned back, a few loose strands framing her face. She looked fragile, but not weak. Ava met us at the entrance, carrying a thick binder and a calm that seemed to absorb chaos. Stay close, she said quietly. They'll try to intimidate you, but the truth's on paper. We've done our part. The hallway outside courtroom 4 was crowded, attorneys, murmuring clerks walking briskly with clipboards. The air hummed with low tension. And then they appeared. The Whitmores moved as a unit dressed like Sunday portraiture, Gerald in a dark wool coat posture, unbending, Evelyn in a camel-colored suit, lips painted like warning signs. Chase trailed behind them, his eyes sweeping over Lily, pausing for half a second. Guilt or calculation, I couldn't tell. Brooke followed, phone in hand, snapping a quick photo before Evelyn's sharp whisper stopped her. Lily's breath caught. I touched her elbow. Don't look at them, I whispered. They're not the jury. Inside the courtroom felt too bright, too public. The judge, a woman named Roberta Klein, sat high above the rest expression, unreadable. She shuffled through the files Ava had submitted. We're here for an emergency protective order hearing regarding Lily Carter Whitmore and Chase Whitmore, she began. Each party will have the opportunity to present their statements. Chase's lawyer, a man with silver hair and the grin of someone used to winning, stood first. Your Honor, this is a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by Mrs. Carter's mother. The Whitmore family has always supported Lily. There's no pattern of abuse, merely a domestic dispute misrepresented as cruelty. I watched him speak like he was narrating a bedtime story for the privileged. Words like unstable, sensitive, and emotional floated through the air dressed as concern. When it was Ava's turn, her tone sliced through the room. We are not here for perception, she said. We are here for evidence. She laid down the photographs, the text messages, the medical records, one by one. The courtroom lights reflected off the glossy images of Lily's red, frost-bitten hands. She read aloud Chase's text, "Stay put until you're calm." The words echoed through the courtroom, small but merciless. Evelyn shifted in her seat, crossing her legs. Brooke stared at the floor, jaw tight. Then Ava handed the judge the neighbor's ring footage, a short clip of the Whitmore porch that night. The grainy image showed Lily outside, curled near the planter snow swirling around her. Inside, silhouettes moved past the window, laughing. The silence that followed felt like a held breath. Judge Klein leaned back. Mr. Whitmore, would you like to explain this video? Chase's throat bobbed. She wanted space. She told me to leave her alone. I didn't realize she'd stayed outside that long. Ava didn't blink. The timestamp shows 26 minutes, Your Honor. The judge looked down at her papers, then at Lily. Mrs. Carter Whitmore, do you fear for your safety? Lily hesitated, her lips trembling. Yes, she said softly. I do. And just like that, it was written into record. After the recess, the decision came quickly. The court grants a temporary protection order for 60 days with the right to extension pending review, Judge Klein ruled. Her tone carried no sympathy, just fact. The court will not make a determination of abuse at this stage. Financial division remains under current marital assets until further motion. It wasn't victory. It wasn't even justice. It was a sliver of safety carved out of a wall of influence. When the gavel struck, Evelyn exhaled sharply, as though the sound offended her. Gerald rose, his face composed but eyes burning. Chase didn't look at Lily again. We left the courtroom into a corridor buzzing with whispers. Someone had recorded the proceeding on their phone. By the time we reached the steps, I saw the first flash of a camera, local reporters sensing blood. Ava muttered, "They must have tipped the press." Within hours, the photo was everywhere. Lily clutching my arm, Ava shielding her from questions, Jason Vega in uniform walking ahead of us. The caption read, Judge Whitmore's daughter-in-law granted temporary protection order against son. The internet did what it always does. It split. Some called Lily brave. Others called her ungrateful. That evening, our phones wouldn't stop vibrating. Headlines multiplied. Fall of a perfect family, behind the Whitmore reputation. Brooke's influencer brand page went private by midnight. At home, Lily sat at the table, scrolling through comments she shouldn't have read. They don't even know me, she whispered. They think I'm lying. Ava called to tell us to stay off social media and keep quiet. Optics shift fast, she said. Let them talk. Truth settles slower, but it sticks. When I hung up, Lily was staring out the window at the snow that had started falling again, soft, relentless. Mom, she said, do you think this is what freedom feels like? I thought about it before answering. No, I said. This is what the start of it feels like. Freedom's still on the other side of fear. She nodded, not smiling, just understanding. The apartment light flickered against her face, pale but steady. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering the world in temporary silence. Inside, for the first time in a long while, we didn't speak. We just breathed, waiting for whatever came next. The news cycle burned fast. By the third day, the Whitmore name was everywhere: headlines, gossip blogs, even the morning talk shows that liked their scandals clean and photogenic. Each outlet used the same photograph: Lily outside the courthouse, eyes down, scarf tight around her neck, with the caption, "The judge's daughter-in-law who spoke out." By Thursday, their lawyers had switched strategy. Silence. No interviews, no statements. Gerald knew the system too well to fight in daylight. His kind preferred polished corridors and backroom promises. That morning, Ava called. "They've reached out," she said flatly. "A settlement proposal." Lily froze the spoon in her cereal midair. "Already they want this buried before the next hearing," Ava continued. "Divorce finalized quietly. You sign an NDA. In exchange, they'll give you the house in Estes Park, your car, and a lump sum payment. Generous if you agree to move on." Lily's eyes searched mine, uncertain. "What does that mean, move on?" "It means silence," I said before Ava could. "It means they buy your pain so no one has to look at it again." Ava nodded. "They're trying to protect their image, not your future." Lily pushed the bowl away, appetite gone. "Maybe I should take it," she whispered. "I'm so tired, Mom. I can't keep reading what people say. Maybe I don't need revenge. I just want peace." I looked at her, this woman who'd already survived too much, and for a moment I understood. Peace sounded like a warm bed, a locked door, no reporters. But then I saw the faint scar along her wrist from the frostbite, the one that would never completely fade. "Peace built on silence isn't peace," I said quietly. "It's just another kind of prison." She said nothing, only lowered her gaze. Later that afternoon, Ava came by with the official papers. She placed them on the table, the sound sharp in the quiet kitchen. "You don't have to decide tonight," she said. "But know this: if you sign, you can't talk publicly again. No interviews, no future lawsuits. It's final." Lily traced the edge of the folder, her nails trembling. "And if I don't?" Ava sighed. "They'll make it hard. Drag out the divorce, freeze assets, smear you online. Gerald's friends on the bench won't touch the case directly, but they'll make it slow." Miserable. When she left, the apartment fell into the kind of silence that hurts your ears. I made tea we didn't drink. Lily sat at the window watching the sun drop behind the frozen roofs. "Do you ever get tired of being strong?" she asked suddenly. "All the time," I said. "Then why do you keep doing it?" "Because someone has to go first." She didn't answer, just stared at the papers for a long time, as if they might whisper a solution. That night, I lay awake, listening to her move around in the next room, the creak of floorboards, the rustle of pages. At one point, I heard her sob quietly, and I didn't go to her. Some choices have to be made alone. By morning, she looked different, pale but calm, the decision already made. "I'm not taking it," she said over coffee. "I can't sign away the truth." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Then we'll brace for the storm." And the storm came. By the next week, new rumors surfaced. Anonymous sources claimed Lily had mental health issues. A gossip column hinted that I had manipulated the narrative for attention. Brooks' followers flooded Lily's old bakery page with insults disguised as concern. Ava stayed steady. "They're testing you," she said during one meeting. "If you don't break, they'll pivot." Still, the pressure worked its way in like cold through thin walls. I caught Lily one night scrolling through the comments, her face blank. "They're saying I made it up," she whispered. I took the phone from her hands. Let them talk. Lies have short legs. But I could see how it cut her, each word another tiny theft of dignity. Then, in the middle of it all, an unexpected letter arrived, not from lawyers, but from the Colorado Women's Legal Foundation. They'd seen the coverage and wanted to offer support, even a grant for survivors pursuing litigation against prominent families. Ava's eyes lit up when she read it. "This changes things," she said. "We can go on the offensive now." For the first time in weeks, Lily smiled, small, tired, but real. That evening, we sat by the window again. Snow had begun to fall soft and steady. She leaned her head against my shoulder. "I used to think strength meant pretending I was okay," she said. "Now it feels more like saying I'm not, but doing it anyway." That's the only kind of strength that lasts, I told her. Down the street, someone's Christmas lights still blinked, even though January had already begun. Maybe they'd forgotten to take them down, or maybe they needed the light for a little longer. Lily watched them flicker and whispered, "They can keep their money. I want my voice." And I knew then she'd already won the hardest part. The rest court's gossip, the Whitmore's fury, was just the noise after impact. The real battle wasn't for justice. It was for self. And for the first time, my daughter had chosen hers. By late February, the snow in Denver had turned gray and brittle, like the remnants of something once pure. The media storm had thinned, though not died out. The Whitmores had retreated from public view, Gerald citing health reasons. Evelyn photographed once leaving a charity luncheon, face hidden behind oversized sunglasses. But silence in their world never meant surrender. It meant strategy. For weeks, things had almost felt normal. Lily started baking again, not for profit, but for peace. The smell of cinnamon and butter filled the apartment, softening the sharp edges of winter. Some mornings I'd find her humming softly, a wooden spoon in her hand flour on her cheek. It was fragile, that calm, but it was real. Then, one gray Tuesday, the calm cracked. Ava called mid-afternoon. Her voice was clipped professional, but beneath it I caught the faint strain she tried to hide. "We've got a complication," she said. Gerald filed a motion to challenge the protection order. Claims Lily fabricated evidence, manipulated recordings, and coerced the officer Vega into false testimony. I gripped the phone. "That's insane." "Of course it is," Ava said, "but it's also effective. He's using his contacts to reframe the case as defamation. If it sticks, it'll turn everything upside down." I looked over at Lily kneading dough by the window, the soft rhythm of her movements almost meditative. I didn't tell her right away. Not that day. That night when she came to sit beside me on the couch, her hands warm from baking, I couldn't hide it any longer. "They're trying to twist it," I said quietly. She didn't look surprised, just tired. "Of course they are. They want to drag Vega into it too," I added. "Make it look like he falsified his report." Her lips parted in a faint gasp. "Jason, he was just doing his job." "Exactly," I said. "And that's why they're targeting him. He's the only one who stood up for you in uniform." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Outside, the wind howled against the window, as if echoing the weight pressing down on us. A few days later, Jason himself showed up at our door. His uniform was gone. He'd been placed on temporary leave pending investigation. He tried to smile when I opened the door, but it didn't reach his eyes. "They're saying I overstepped protocol," he said, "that I interfered in a domestic matter without authorization." "That's ridiculous," I snapped. He shrugged. "Doesn't matter. The department wants distance. Politics." Lily stood frozen near the table, her face pale. "Jason, I'm so sorry." He cut her off gently. "Don't apologize. I knew the risk when I stepped onto that porch. I'd do it again." There was something raw in his voice, something that made Lily's eyes glisten. She stepped forward, placing a trembling hand on his arm. "I wish I didn't keep costing people their peace," she whispered. "You don't," he said, looking at her with quiet conviction. "You cost them their comfort. That's different." When he left, Lily went to her room without another word. I stayed at the window, watching his taillights disappear into the snow. It struck me then how injustice didn't just crush the victim, it rippled outward, staining everyone who dared to stand near. The following week was a blur of hearings and cold coffee. Gerald's legal team was ruthless, submitting motions, demanding depositions, leaking anonymous tips to the press about Vega's supposed misconduct. Ava fought back with composure that bordered on steel. Still, I saw the fatigue settle into her shoulders. "They're not after truth," she said one evening, dropping a folder onto my kitchen table. "They're after exhaustion." And it was working. Lily began waking at odd hours, restless and distant. Some nights I'd find her sitting in the dark, staring at the city lights through the frosted window. "I can't keep reliving it, Mom," she murmured once. "Every hearing feels like being on that porch again." I knelt beside her. Then let me carry the fight for a while. She turned toward me, tears glimmering. You already have. I just don't want to lose you too. Her words hit me harder than she knew. Because she wasn't wrong. Every battle had its cost. Mine was starting to show sleepless nights, trembling hands, a chest that felt too tight too often. But I couldn't stop now, not when the truth was still under siege. Then one late March morning, everything shifted again. A leak. A news site published internal emails from the courthouse messages between Gerald and a clerk, implying he'd influenced the original judge's rotation schedule. Ava called before the article had even cooled online. "This is it," she said, breathless. "This is the crack we needed." By evening, 3 more outlets had picked up the story. Gerald's name trended for the first time not as a respected retired judge, but as a man accused of bending the law for family gain. Lily read the article in silence, her expression unreadable. When she finally looked up, she said, "Does this mean it's over?" "No," I said softly, "but it means the truth is louder now." She leaned back, closing her eyes. For the first time in months, her shoulders seemed to drop just a little, as if releasing air she'd been holding since that winter night. Outside, snow began to fall again, slow, deliberate, like the world exhaling. For the first time, it didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a pause, the fragile space between breaking and healing. By April, the city had thawed, but the air still carried that strange chill that follows scandal, the kind that lingers long after the headlines fade. The Whitmores had gone silent again, retreating to their estate on Ridgeview Lane, where the curtains never opened and the gate intercom went unanswered. Yet even in silence, their presence pressed against us like static that refused to dissipate. Lily and I were still in the apartment, our small refuge smelling faintly of bread and burnt coffee. Life had become a quiet routine of therapy sessions, legal updates, and long walks that didn't require words. The hearings had paused pending investigation into Gerald's alleged misconduct. For the first time, we had time to breathe, though neither of us quite trusted it. Then one afternoon, Ava called. Her tone was careful, deliberate. "Gerald's requesting a mediation meeting," she said. "Private. No press, no court. Just both parties and counsel." Lily frowned. "Why now?" "Because he's bleeding," Ava replied, "and men like him only negotiate when they see their reflection cracking." I wanted to refuse. Every instinct in me screamed trap, but Lily's eyes, calm and resolute, met mine. "I need to face them," she said. "I can't keep letting them exist as shadows." And so a week later, we drove up to Ridgeview. The house stood like a museum of denial, massive, pristine, every brick whispering money and silence. The front door opened before we could knock. Evelyn stood there, her expression carved from marble. "You shouldn't have come," she said to me, not unkindly, but without warmth. "I'm not here for you," I answered. Inside, the air smelled of old roses and lemon polish. It was too clean, too careful, like a place that had never known real life. Chase wasn't there. Ava had confirmed he'd signed a separate agreement barring him from contact. But his presence clung to the house like smoke, every photo, every perfectly aligned frame. Gerald sat in the study posture straight, despite the cane leaning beside him. His skin looked thinner, paler than I remembered, but his eyes were still sharp, assessing. "Lily," he said as we entered, voice low. "You look... well." She didn't answer. Ava sat between us, her legal pad ready. The only sound was the faint hum of the grandfather clock. Gerald exhaled, folding his hands. "You've caused this family an extraordinary amount of pain," he began. "But I can admit perhaps we caused you some as well." Ava's pen scratched softly. "You'll want to be specific, Judge." He ignored her. "The media frenzy benefits no one. I'd like to resolve this quietly. If you retract the abuse allegations and agree to confidentiality, I can ensure financial security, yours and your mother's." Lily let out a slow breath. "You think this is about money?" Gerald's jaw tightened. "Everything is about money." "No," she said, her voice steady now. "It's about dignity, about not being erased." Evelyn, who'd been standing near the window, turned sharply. "You have no idea what you've done to this family's reputation, Gerald's legacy." "His," Legacy. Lily interrupted her tone, quiet but cutting. You mean the illusion that power makes cruelty respectable? For a long moment, no one spoke. The air between them felt heavy enough to break. Gerald's hand trembled as he reached for his glass. You've grown harder, he said finally. Your mother must be proud. I met his gaze unflinching. She's grown clearer, I said. That's what truth does. Evelyn turned away, eyes glistening though she'd never admit it. You think the world will remember you kindly for this? Lily smiled faintly. I don't need the world to remember me. I just need to stop forgetting myself. Ava closed her folder. Unless there's a genuine proposal of accountability, this meeting is over. Gerald leaned back, the faintest sigh escaping him. You'll regret this, he said almost gently. Maybe Lily replied, but I'll regret silence more. When we left, the sky had turned overcast, a spring storm brewing at the horizon. As we walked down the long driveway, I looked back at the house, its perfect symmetry, its walls that held too many secrets. For the first time, it didn't intimidate me. It looked hollow. In the car, Lily rolled down the window, letting the wind whip through her hair. It feels different now, she said softly. What does driving away? She said, like I'm not running anymore. We drove in silence, the city lights appearing one by one as the sky darkened. At a red light, I glanced at her profile, calm, unguarded. The storm clouds behind us seemed to shrink in the rearview mirror. When we finally pulled into the apartment lot, Lily reached over and squeezed my hand. I thought going back there would break me, she said, but I think it did the opposite. I smiled faintly. That's what happens when you stop living inside someone else's story. She leaned her head against the seat, eyes closing. Outside, rain began to fall, soft, forgiving. For the first time since that winter night, it didn't sound like despair. It sounded like cleansing. By May, the court calendar had shifted again, delayed by motions filings, and the kind of bureaucratic limbo designed to exhaust people into surrender. But this time, neither Lily nor I felt cornered. The tension had dulled into something else, endurance. A quiet strength that didn't roar anymore, just breathed. The world had moved on as it always does. Other scandals took over the headlines. The Whitmores were no longer the main act, just a footnote in a long scroll of public outrage and forgetfulness. But for us, life hadn't gone back to normal. It had just changed shape. The mornings were slower now. Lily made coffee without shaking hands. She had started teaching a baking class at a community center 3 evenings a week, mostly kids and single mothers. Sometimes she came home smelling like vanilla and yeast, tired but content. They're not afraid to laugh, she told me once. I forgot what that sounded like. I'd picked up extra shifts at the gym coaching younger athletes. Some nights I'd stay late, working with the ones who needed more than just training kids who carried bruises they didn't talk about. It reminded me why I started teaching in the first place. Not for trophies, but for moments when someone remembered they were strong. We didn't talk much about the Whitmores anymore. Their silence was its own confession. But every so often, a reminder would slip through a news brief about Gerald's resignation, an online post about Evelyn closing her charity foundation for personal reasons, the last trace of their power fading inch by inch. Then one evening, Ava called. Her voice was lighter than I'd heard in months. The investigation's over, she said. Gerald's found guilty of judicial misconduct. He's losing his pension and advisory role. I didn't speak at first, just sat there, the phone pressed against my ear, staring at the darkening window. He'll never face criminal charges, she added. Too many protections, too many favors. But his name won't carry the same weight again. That's enough, I said quietly. When I told Lily, she didn't cry. She just nodded and whispered, "It's over." But later that night, I found her standing by the open window, eyes wet, not from sadness, but something harder to name, release maybe, the kind that comes after years of being tense without realizing it. We didn't celebrate. There was no victory party, no grand sense of triumph, just an ache that started to fade. Healing never arrived with applause, it came in fragments. Weeks passed. The lilacs bloomed early that year, filling the streets with a sweetness that felt almost undeserved. One morning while walking to the gym, I saw a young woman sitting on a park bench crying quietly. I hesitated, then sat down beside her. "First time it's felt safe enough to fall apart?" I asked gently. She looked at me startled, then nodded. I didn't ask her story. I didn't need to. Sometimes pain wears a universal face. I handed her a tissue from my pocket, and we sat in silence until her breathing slowed. When she finally left, she smiled through the tears. That night when I told Lily about it, she said, "You've always been the kind of person who shows up for strangers." I smiled. Maybe that's how we heal, by making sure no one else has to sit outside in the cold alone. Summer came slow and quiet. The hearings were done. Ava had moved on to a new case in Chicago, but still called, sometimes always ending with, "You two remind me why I do this." Jason was reinstated at the precinct, though he said he was thinking about transferring to community outreach. "The badge feels heavier these days," he'd told me. And Lily, she began to paint again. Small canvases, at first muted colors, soft edges. Then one day she showed me something new, a portrait of two women sitting across from each other at a kitchen table. One older, one younger. No tears, no smiles, just quiet recognition. "It's not finished," she said, studying it. "It doesn't need to be," I replied. "It's already true." The air grew thick with the scent of summer rain. One evening, we left the windows open as thunder rolled in from the mountains. The storm came gentle at first, then harder rain pelting the glass in wild rhythm. We didn't turn on the lights, just sat there letting the sound fill the silence between us. Lily leaned her head against my shoulder. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked softly. "All the time," I admitted, "but not the same way. How do you think of it now?" I watched lightning flash across the skyline. "As the night we both woke up." She smiled, small but certain. The rain kept falling, steady and cleansing. The kind of rain that doesn't wash things away, it roots them deeper. And for the first time, I didn't feel like we were surviving anymore. We were simply living.